Good evening, our dear viewers. So today I bring you the 5th episode of the Green Talk Show. Yeah, since the year began, we've had over 4 episodes, and yeah, and we are still going. I mean, we are not about to stop. So allow me introduce to you the 5th episode of the Green Talk Show, and our topic today, um, for our project, of what of planting forest trees, of rather of planting a tree forest. Sorry, a food forest, So our topic today is encouraging climate change risk reduction and adaptation for economic sustainability. So I would kindly request her to introduce herself briefly so that people who are viewing may know who we are hosting tonight, and also we expect to learn greatly from her. Yeah, and of course impact the climate and the environment and the climate entirely. You're most welcome, Mrs. Taylor.
Yes, thank you very much, Kathy. And I'm very happy to be part of this show. Indeed, I'm very impressed by the fact that the youth are coming up and really going green. And as a person who's very enthusiastic about climate change, I've worked with WFP now, and I work as a climate risk management specialist. And really, I'm enthusiastic and very happy to find people who can speak of the same cause that I stand for. And I definitely will be very happy to interact further with the students and young people in building this train of thought. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mrs. Taylor. So our topic today is kind of huge, just that maybe time won't be enough for us, but there is a lot to dig deep into. According to this topic, there is a lot, totally a lot. I think even one day wouldn't be enough for us to exploit it. But I'll pick out the major outstanding points, and I think that's what we shall focus on with our guests tonight. And I would also want to inform the audience that the executive director for Absa Bank would be with us, but shortly, maybe with time. Still caught up, but we expect him shortly. So, Mrs. Stella, according to our topic, according to me, it is divided into a lot, but I'm seeing about 2 outside. So, Mrs. Taylor, I would kindly request you to maybe, in simple terms, inform the viewers out there what sustainability at large is, if you don't mind.
Okay. First and foremost, I will talk about how, as WFP, we try to contribute to this sustainability that we want. We are talking about a sustainable green economy. And first and foremost, we know that sustainability in terms of the green economy requires that there's an improved human well-being and social equity. While we have to reduce environmental risks and ecological scarcities. So in simplest terms, sustainability can be thought of as a state in which we have low carbon emissions, we are more resource efficient, we are socially inclusive, and we are trying to provide that enabling environment that will help different economies or different people be able to transition into this kind of green economy that they talk about as being sustainable. So in simple terms, that is what I would see as trying to get there. So what are we doing as WFP to ensure this? We work in 4 ways, and these 4 ways is that we help governments, local partners, in which we try to change lives, to build resilience of vulnerable people, and to strengthen those national systems. Of course, among these local partners, the governments, and so on, are the youth who are key in this area. So we, as much as possible, look at 4 areas of ensuring this sustainability. First of all, is to inform on climate hazards. Are we able to anticipate these hazards and be able to flag these hazards so that we can preposition financing and action before this disaster strike? We also try to restore degraded ecosystems. How are we doing this in Uganda? We are working with refugee hosting communities in the Southwest and West Nile, where we try to give them tools of self-reliance. We provide for asset creation and livelihood projects. And we also provide areas or safe spaces where community can come together. These are the young people where they can innovate, share information, and also work on projects that help to use land sustainably. We also try as much as possible to protect these most vulnerable people. And in the case of the refugees in Southwest and Northwest and West Nile, we look to providing assistance to them in terms of cash payouts during times when there is hardship or when lean seasons are imminent. And we look at groups such as children under 5, pregnant and lactating women. We also, as much as possible, provide for sustainable or improvements in education by providing school feeding, and especially for areas that experience shocks. And last but not least, we try to energize communities and schools by enhancing sustainable energy provision, providing for clean cooking stoves, building capacities around production of things like briquettes, and improving processing and storage for products. So in a way, we try to encourage this kind of sustainability through some of the actions that we focus on. Over to you, Kathy.
Okay. And thanks a lot, Mrs. Stella. I think you've answered what my first question was supposed to be, because it was supposed to be that what is the approach of World Food Programme in promoting positive environmental, social, economic growth of communities to strengthen their resilience towards climate change. Maybe what you missed out is how all that you've done, how is it building resilient people towards climate change?
Of course, how is it building these people towards climate change? If you transfer capacities in terms of skills, you're helping these people be able to use the resources that they have. Let me say, if you're looking at land, you're looking at people who are either refugees or displaced. They have very little resource to their disposal. How can they use this land? So you build capacities around sustainable use of land, using ecologically friendly farming methods that help to conserve soil fertility. You also look at how they can use these small areas that they have more beneficially. So in a case in point would be, for instance, if you have a small space that you've been allocated, for instance, by the government, or where, let me say you're a youth in a refugee area. So what are you going to do with this place? You may want to grow more food, but how can you grow it in a way that you can put all these things on that small piece of land. So working around the issue of backyard gardening that allows for sustainable use of land resources. We try to use as much as possible organic and natural soil nutrients to improve the fertility and help to produce, for instance, food in small spaces that can also feed these people for the time that they require. So in terms of how do we do it, we provide training, we provide, of course, some of those materials or assets. We also build capacities around how these assets can be sustained for longer times. So issues like providing for irrigation, but also training these people on how to do water storage when, for instance, the rains are in excess and therefore they can be able to grow crops for a much longer time. In some of these areas, we also build skills, especially to increase production in crop and animal husbandry. So in some of the areas, we call them incubation hubs. We help them put up these enterprises that may be things like piggery, rabbit rearing, cabbage growing, and then training them on the skills on how to keep these crops, be able to sustain them through a longer period of time, and then also be able to market them. So we provide that marketing support in terms of knowledge, information that they can use to reach the markets and market together as groups. I think that's what I can say about our efforts in that area. Hello?
Hello. Hi, Stella. Can you hear me? Hi, Kathy.
Yes, please.
I think we are experiencing a little bit of network problems. Um, Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes, Ismail, I can hear you.
All right, sure. Stella, can you hear us as well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Um,
Okay.
Mrs. Stella, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Okay. I think I should pardon my question. Is it okay if I pardon? Wow, network is bad. My question was, from your experience working with an international UN agency like World Food Program, you've of course engaged in global discussions on different occasions or occasionally. What would you speak on the value of climate risk reduction as a tool towards achieving a sustainable green economy?
Thank you, Kathy.
Mm,
Thank you, Kathy, for that question.
you're
Indeed,
welcome.
indeed, yes. In terms of climate risk reduction, we think that this is important because increasingly there is evidence that shows that severe weather events are becoming common due to climate change. If you look at Uganda, for instance, we have experienced in the last 40 years, we've experienced epidemics, droughts, earthquakes, floods, storms. These have had negative impacts on livelihoods, crops, and infrastructure. Disasters have also become more complex. So, a case in point, if you look at when COVID happened, there was drought in some areas, but then there was also flooding at the same time. And in 2019 and 2020, there was a loss of about 152 million US dollars attributed to natural disasters. So, to a certain extent, climate crisis has led to unprecedented increase in hunger, conflicts, and displacement. And we know that when we look at households and communities, they bear the risks, they bear the costs of these disasters, and these costs add up quickly. And therefore, if you live in, for instance, a small town, whether you live near this big city, or even if you're a government, these risks finally start impacting your economy. And a case in point is you find that, for instance, when COVID came up, we find that many of the after effects of COVID, we still suffer in terms of a change in the economic situation. So it's very important that climate risk is identified. We need to identify this risk, what risk is faced by specific families, what vulnerabilities cause them to face that risk. And when you understand the risk, you're able then to assess the level of the exposure and incorporate this into your decision making. So where would this decision making impact? For instance, you would be able to know that these are the most affected people, where they are found, and what risk they are facing. So when you understand the risk, you're able to adequately prepare and plan, and this is critical in protecting vulnerable people and places and prevent the mounting of costs due to climate risk. So in short, I would say that climate risk is very important, and it has gained much prominence in the past let me say 2-3 years, where we have seen an escalation of disaster and where the impacts of these disasters really have to be addressed by a multitude of people and partners. And that is why I think that at this point, even for international organizations, we need to recognize that climate risk is a very important issue that needs to be addressed across the board by communities, by governments that need to work on their infrastructure to make it resilient, and by also households that will need to make decisions, for instance, on where to live and where to grow their crops and animals. So that's why I think that climate risk is a very important issue.
Thanks a lot, Mrs. Chela. Thanks all the viewers. And thanks for your appreciation. I keep seeing the comments coming in, and yeah, I'm so glad. I really hope you learn from it, because I believe there is a lot to learn from right now. So, Mrs. Stella, our next question, like my next question would also be, and you, as you personally,
Mm.
what are you doing to contribute to a better environment?
Well, that's a very exciting question. In my own capacities as Stella and the people in my household, as well as my friends, we have gone into greening, or what I can say, planting of trees. And so we've come together in my community and with a couple of friends, about 20 families, and we've accessed land that we have, we are reforestating, and this is in Wachiso. And we are looking at reforesting this land, reforestating this land, or afforesting this land, and putting in a combination of fruit trees as well as trees that we can use for building. And so we've had this project going for 1 year. Of course, we will need some help along the way. What helps is some of us are agriculturalists, but then also to a certain extent, the partnership within which we operate also includes a lot of people who need trees for building. And so for
Okay.
us, we are looking at that as a source, for instance, for building materials, but then also for firewood and also for improving the area, especially where we have this piece of land. On another front, we are also working with a community CSO, and this CSO is working to protect or conserve indigenous trees. And this CSO is called Mukama Afayo in Wachiso. It's also working to keep nurseries of those indigenous trees and probably be able to spread these trees around to different people who are growing trees. I think that in my own capacity has been what I have done or worked with other people in my community to do. But then also on the part of WFP, the WFP, we have worked to increase access of households to clean cooking stoves, especially in Changwali and Chikube. We've also worked to set up those incubation hubs that I've talked about, where people learn to innovate and replicate what they learn. And in these areas, they look at mostly agroforestry. And then we've also worked with institutions like OPM, the district local governments, and Excel Hot. Excel Hot is private sector to capacitate groups with skills on production for crop and husbandry skills, crop and animal husbandry skills. So these incubation hubs we ensure that the youth and men, women who are involved in this, who are most vulnerable, are supported to maintain these different enterprises. We're also working with WFP to ensure that we can push for greening, and that is the shifting of subsistence farming to practices that use water efficiently. And also through irrigation, we try to promote that. The use of optimal tillage and integrated pest control, and the backyard gardening that allows us to use existing land resources sustainably. So that in my own capacity is what I have done. There are also other efforts, of course, that look at, for instance, reducing the use of, for instance, fossil fuels. And the case in point is things like vehicles, trying to reduce the amount of time that you use, for instance, these kind of things, walking more, working from home, so as to reduce pollution, but also gas emissions. So these are kind of small ways in which we try to conserve. We also try to promote as much movement from charcoal, from the use of charcoal and wood, and for those who can afford it, to transition to gas, but then also to promote the use of cook stoves, efficient cook stoves, and the use of briquettes. So I'll stop there, my dear Kathy.
Are you able to hear me, Mrs. Stella?
Yes, I can hear you, Catherine.
Yeah, so I was saying, if there are any more sustainable practices, you could give to our listeners right now to adopt too, besides what you had already given, or yeah, help them to be able to understand more on how they can adopt them easily, and those that they cannot adopt, what can they opt for, so as to reduce the risk at which the climate is at, and also to how can they become more environmentally cautious.
So indeed, I have mentioned things like the motorized use of non-motorized means of transport. Uh, we can also talk about moving people from using wood to probably using things like briquettes. I know they are not cheap, but then we can teach people how to use them. We can also build awareness of local species. And these, some of these species really are important in that this is our biodiversity, and we have to intentionally preserve and conserve them. We can also use things like starting from rubbish disposal, where we avoid the use of plastic polythene, try to use as much recyclable or reusable bags, but then also use paper bags. And then creating industries that are able to recycle these plastics, but then also provide for products like the paper bags. And these kind of industries provide opportunities for the youth, I believe. There is also, we can also look at reskilling, re-educating our workforce, where they can participate in. These can be used to earn a livelihood. Now, when we talk about these natural assets, things like when an environment is degraded, let me say a swamp, a river bank, and so on, working with communities around these river banks to protect them from siltation, to protect them eventually from leading to flooding and so on. So we can work with these communities in ways that are smart, but then also help in greening our economies. But these all provide opportunities for the youth. And I want to ask the youth to look at areas, especially in being the champions for change, in the way people treat the environment, things like having campaigns that that provide solutions, for instance, to the use of polythene bags, the use of plastics, things that can show that they are leading the way, and in that they can advocate for a change in the society. But then also exploiting job opportunities in areas such as where there is recycling, things like nursery tree operation, where you want to grow trees, but then provide for opportunities for youth to participate in this through showing them those opportunities that exist, for instance, in planting trees, selling these trees for people to green their compounds, for people to plant round assets. They can also participate in things like marketing of solar technology, promoting solar technology to their peers, but then also to other people within their communities. So I believe that these are some of the things that the youth can look to exploiting, especially in our movement or transition to greening.
Well, thanks very much, Stella, for that great insight on what you think um, the youth can adopt to create an impact and to add their action on other efforts that are being done by other actors. So I'll hand over to Kathy, see um, if you have final words for us, so that we can. Okay. Hi, Kathy. Please take over.
Um, yeah, thanks a lot, Ismail. And I think we've had it all from Mrs. Stella, and today's, like all the other talk shows, today's talk show was also very educative, and yeah, the topic was really spicy. Of course, we wouldn't want to end here, but due to the fact of time, I think that's all. That's all for tonight. And yeah, of course, sustainability is really enjoyable and wide when you're learning, but it becomes more enjoyable when we practice what we've learned. So I urge all of us to go back and put in practice what we've learned for a better environment, to grow and economically sustainable, to reduce risks, climate risks. And yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mrs. Stella. We were really humbled to have you tonight, and we would love to have you on and on again.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy, and I'm honored, of course, um, to be part of your show. I'd like to thank My Tree Initiative, though I also haven't, I would have wanted to learn more about what you do, where you are situated. Of course, I can get that from the material that you sent me. But I would like to thank you for inviting me to this panel. And I look forward to further engagements with you, learning from you because you're the youth. But then I believe that you're a bright group that will lead the way for other youth to be proactive in looking for and exploiting opportunities that present themselves through the greening of our economy and of our country. So for God and my country, I thank you and I wish you the best in all your initiatives and endeavors in ensuring sustainable growth and resilience of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mrs. And we are looking forward to having you more and more and working more closely with you. Thank you, and yeah, good night.
Good night to you, and thank you for the listeners for being with us this evening.
Yeah.